Hi there, this is Dr. Anna Maria Helt here with Basmati.com and Milo in the background. This week I'm going to talk about a plant called wild lettuce. And the botanical name is Lactuca cereulata. There's also Lactuca virosa or Lactuca scariola. And you might see various of those names if you look it up in a book. It's not in a lot of herb books, but you will see it in books by authors such as Michael Moore, the herbalist, and Charles Kane, an herbalist in the southwestern U.S., and they will talk about it. And so here is the plant. Here, it kind of looks dandelion-ish. Here is the stalk, and I don't know if you can see those little hairs on the stalk. It's kind of prickly, and some people do call it prickly lettuce. There are the roots. Here's another closer look at the leaves. Sometimes they can be more deeply lobed or toothed, sometimes not as much. And so where I live here in southwestern Colorado, this is a pretty prevalent weed. And in fact, it's in many places of North America. It's an invasive naturalized species that came from Europe. And it can do really well even in our solid clay soils here in Durango. And in fact, it likes waste places. And so you'll see it in kind of empty lots, empty dirt lots and such. And after new construction, if a lot of the vegetation has been torn out, and you'll even sometimes see it in your garden. And so this particular one was a volunteer in one of the flower pots on my balcony, so it even showed up here on my balcony. Now, it does tend to like slightly wetter conditions, but it will even grow in relatively dry spots as well. It is partial to some shade, at least some species are, but I've seen this growing in an intensely sunny spot on the south side of the yard I used to have. So it can really take over. It can actually get pretty invasive. So you want to keep an eye on it if it is one showing up in your yard. But that said, it is used as medicine. Now, aside from wild lettuce and prickly lettuce, one of its names was also opium lettuce, one of its old-fashioned names. And if you're getting excited about that, quash it. Rein yourself in because it does not have opioids in it. And so if people are thinking about using wild lettuce to get high or euphoric, not so much. Now, the part that is, well, actually, let me talk about what it's used for, and then I'll get into the processing of it because it's a little different in terms of the harvesting and such than your standard plant. So, this is a mildly sedating herb, wild lettuce, and it is used for things like mild insomnia, restlessness, especially if a little bit of sleeplessness is maybe coming from overwork or burnout. So the Charles Kane, the herbalist, actually talks about this being a good herb for people whose not so great sleep is from stress and overwork, kind of burning the candle at too many ends, as it were. And this is also a great herb to use as a cough suppressant. And so it's going to help sedate overly irritated bronchial pathways. And the herbalist Michael Moore talks about using it even in children. Now, different herbalists will often have different opinions about a plant. And so in Charles Kane's book, he talks about harvesting the plant right before it goes into flower. And in at least one of Michael Moore's books, he talks about harvesting it after it's in the flower. And so that tells me it probably works fine either way, whether before flowering or during flowering. And so the actual medicine of this plant is a milky latex that forms. And let me see. I don't really have a knife right now. The lighting is really horrible in here. This plant might not be quite old enough to be making the latex just yet. I was going to show you what it looks like, but this plant is not even remotely close to blooming, so I'm not seeing it yet, but I'm going to keep an eye on that stalk to see if it produces that exudate. And so it'll come out as like a latexy white sticky substance that then dries to a little bit darker of a color. And that is the medicine. And so the strongest medicine is if you can isolate that latex from the plant's stalk. And there are a couple of different ways to do this. Michael Moore has a really hilarious description on how to do it. But basically, it's really time consuming, and you sit outside with scissors or clippers and you start at the top and you cut a tiny bit off the stem, wait for the latex or the sap to come out, wait for it to harden, scrape it off and collect it, make another cut, another maybe ½ inch down the stalk, wait for that sap to come out, wait for it to harden, scrape it off. And if I recall, Michael Moore talks about having a good comfy lawn chair and maybe a box radio out there and a good book while you go through this process. Now, another way that you can harvest this is to juice the stalk. And that's not going to be as strong because now you've got other plant bits together with that sap or latex, but that will still work. And then another way that I learned from a different herbalist, this was at a seminar a number of years ago that the herbalist Seven Song taught, and he talked about tincturing the plant, but then repeating that tincturing a few times. So in other words, you would chop it up, set up your regular plant tincture, let it go for, a certain amount of time. Normally you do tinctures for 2 weeks, but you want to let this go for a week or two, and then take out that plant, save the liquid, put fresh wild lettuce into that liquid, do your maceration again, or, your maceration is when you're letting that plant steep in the alcohol and water mix. Again, let that go for another week or two, and then strain out the plant and add a third batch of your wild lettuce. And so you're making a stronger than usual tincture and trying to concentrate that medicine a little bit. It's not the most potent plant in the world when you are getting other of the plant bits in, but I don't know of anybody that's willing to sit there all day and collect that resin. But it can be good medicine, and especially if you live in a place where this is common, it's free medicine for you, and you'll probably want to dig it up anyway so it doesn't take over your yard. So now you can dig it up and make a nice, gentle, relaxing remedy for insomnia and restlessness and those annoying coughs, especially the ones that happen at night. So that is wild lettuce, and until next time, be well.